Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to our Meet a Member podcast. My name is Luke Bader. I'm Director of Membership and Programs at the FAIR Institute. And with me today is Josh Marker. He is Head of Security and Risk Assurance at SAP, and he is our Chair of the Dallas-Fort Worth FAIR Institute chapter. Josh, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
We were just talking before we started recording that this is a long time coming. You've been a member of the FAIR Institute since about 2018. That's when your first FairCon was back, what is that now, 7 years ago? So this is a little bit overdue for you. And
Yes, yes, it is.
well,
So I
yeah, go ahead.
I originally found out about FAIR in 2018, and somewhat I was working in the networking world at that time in the Cisco partner space and living and breathing all things networking and really wanted to learn more about security. And so I was looking around for a way to do that, and I found FAIR. And at first, it seemed like a way for me to help myself understand all of the different pieces of information security. And the quantitative aspect of it really just kind of spoke to me. Like
Mhm.
if this thing goes up, then this other thing goes up or down. And was really just spoke to me in a way. And I ended up getting in touch with people in my network who said, "Hey, FairCon is held every year, and you should come. It's in Pittsburgh." And so that was the first FairCon, and you're right, it is long overdue.
That's great, and I would certainly appreciate you taking the time today and giving us a little bit of your history, and some tips and tricks that you've learned over the last 6 or 7 years or so. Um, After you originally got involved and after that first Fair conference and you became a member and started to do more work with Fair specifically, what were some of the immediate benefits that you saw in terms of the way quantification brought to the way that you were managing risk as a whole? And maybe have those benefits stayed true over the course of the years, or have things increased or changed over time for you?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I mean, I can speak personally, lots of benefits because I was able to make that transition from one thing in the tech world to
Yeah.
this very much, information security, risk management role that I really wanted to do. So I
Mhm.
personally benefited a lot. Not long after that FairCon, I started a full-time dedicated job doing cyber risk quantification, as we call it now. But
Mhm.
so that was really personally enriching, and I love the work. I think some of the main things that I see actually come out of having FAIR in the toolkit and in what we do and what we use for information security is a lot around the language. The language that we use becomes more clarified. And when you try to conduct a quantitative analysis, you realize very quickly that you have to have the words right. You have to have agreement on what the words mean. So language becomes very important. And as soon as you're trying to put numbers to things, you realize there's this linguistic foundation that has to be there first. I think a few other specific examples are the facilitation of productive disagreement. So the example is when someone says this risk is high and another person says this risk is medium, and the two people cannot reconcile that one believes it's high and can never be convinced that it's medium, and the other person thinks it's medium and never believe that it's high. This is one of the dangers of having only language and not being able to then say, well, why is it that you think it's high? Oftentimes, if that's the limit of what we have, just high and medium, then that's the end of the conversation. Whoever outranks is the one who wins.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what we want
Right.
collectively, like as a profession. So there can be a more productive conversation when you have the right words. You take the terminology in the FAIR ontology and you say, why is it that this is medium? Why do you believe it's medium? What is the evidence for this being medium? And same thing to the person who says hi. Also, if you have numbers, now you can have what exactly you mean, which brings me to another example that I think is really beneficial, and that's the illusion of communication. So when two people say or agree that something is high, both high, and one has in their mind, let's say, 50 million, and another has in their mind 500 million, well, they haven't really agreed, actually.
Right.
And
Totally.
So that's a problem in and of itself. So the illusion that people are agreeing when they actually shouldn't be, and you should have a deeper conversation, or uncovering the fact that there's disagreement when otherwise with just language, it appears to be agreement. So I think just, and so many things I could talk about the language. I mean, even risk. I'm guilty of this as much as anyone. And at the risk of making an ironic joke, see, I just did it there.
Yep.
We say risk and we mean different things.
Right.
We mean so many different things. We sometimes use risk in place of a threat actor, or in place of a particular methodology that a threat actor might use, or we use it in place of the consequences that happen, or sometimes we talk about control deficiencies as risks.
Right.
And while they're important to risk and related to risk, if we're not careful about what exactly we mean when we say risk, then it gets messy and hard to defend and hard to make our case. And what's really important is it's not about being right, it's about uncovering the concerns that people have and putting them in the right place. So I think just the facilitation of these kinds of conversations, the enriching of them, getting to the bottom of some of these things that are hard to reconcile without the right language or quantification, and uncovering some of these topics that we wouldn't otherwise, I think have been some of the huge benefits of using FAIR, the terminology, and the quantification.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really interesting point in highlighting the words are as important, if not more than, say, the data or the math or the science behind risk management. Making sure that everybody on the team knows what we're talking about before we even go to run the analysis is the very first step, 101 right there. And I think it's also interesting that you are talking about the way you're talking about sounds like you're describing the relationship between different security team members and team members on the same in the risk department. But then we take another step, the next step out, and it's how that team is communicating results to the business side of an organization. So that's a big thing that we see and talk about a lot is how are you effectively communicating the security results of an analysis to the business side in dollars and cents. So I want to
Mhm.
just see if you have any kind of following along on your thought process here, any experience or thoughts in doing that, even after getting through the security colloquial. How has building having those building blocks and doing these scenarios, how has that helps you communicate in dollars and cents into the business side?
Yeah, definitely. So it helps a ton. I think um, in general, the just the typical, like the guidance, and this is not, I didn't come up with this. Tony Martin Vegi really is like the
Okay.
inspiration. Meet people where they are, show them the things in the ways that they are familiar with seeing them. So, not everyone likes a loss exceedance curve. If it's
Right.
brand new for people, maybe it's not going to work. Now it can, but if someone's used to consuming quantitative or diagrams, information from a diagram in a different way, maybe you don't present it to them in a loss exceedance curve. So meet people where they are. That's the hat tip to Tony and the credit to him. Um, I think I think the other thing that's important is knowing what the right level of resolution is. So as information security professionals, it's a certain set of jargon and colloquialisms and vernacular, and it's important. Everyone has the reasons for having all these detailed things. But if you go into a doctor and the doctor's going to tell you about a diagnosis, they don't use all of that terminology to describe to you, the patient. You, the patient, care. So what? What if? I mean, give me the bottom line. Like, tell me what should I care about? What are my options? I
Yeah.
don't need. I didn't go to medical school. I don't need to know that stuff. So, in a similar way, it's going to depend a lot on who the audience is. Now, that's not to say that we hide information or anything like that, but we summarize to the right level. Much like the FAIR ontology has
Yep.
this overarching, at the highest level, it's risk. What is risk really? Well, we could drill into that and we could say it's really loss event frequency and loss magnitude. Is that just all by itself? Well, loss magnitude, there really is more to it than that. And so that kind of guides the conversations depending on who you're talking to. Very high level executive who has 5 minutes, you're going to have a different conversation than the security architect who you're explaining the analysis to, who has detailed ins and out knowledge of the solution that you're doing the analysis for. Probably they're involved in the analysis, and so it's just customizing to the right level of resolution what the message is about the analysis, and also what the takeaway is, because some people care about the whole story start to finish, and some people just want the, you know, so what, like, what do I do with this? And you can't know all of that ahead of time, but a lot
Yeah.
of it you can anticipate, and you can say, hey, very busy executive, I'm lucky to get 5 minutes on their calendar.
Yeah.
Well, I need to be real punchy with the message, and it's got to be always honest and as clear as it can be, but you know, there's a lot of fluff that maybe they don't need. Just get right to it.
Yeah, and I think that knowing your audience is key. And the one thing that I've kind of seen as well be successful is, it's okay to use the heat map in a presentation as long as the pieces on there are done through this quantitative analysis, and the engineer or the architect is able to back it up if they have questions. But it's okay to present in a higher level. Definitely have seen that be very successful, and would agree with you there for sure. Um, we know that quantification is one part, it's an important step of a larger enterprise risk management program. Outside of that, what are some other key issues or things that you see facing the larger risk management industry today that either you've experienced yourself or you've seen from other organizations or from different events that you've been at? What are some other key elements or things you're seeing today?
Yeah, so I guess my answer kind of depends on the time scale.
Mm.
Um, you know, if what's obviously going on right now with artificial intelligence is really concerning and exciting all at the same time. You know, it's not only a tool to help us with parts of our work, but it's also something to be examined, investigated, you know, protected against, audited, you know, all of these things. So that's changing our world, whether we like it or not, and no matter how much each of us are individually involved in things.
Yep.
But if you zoom out a little bit from on the time scale, um, I mean, not only on the topic of AI, we have had these waves like over time. This isn't the first time, and not to say that what has happened in the past will happen in the future, but you know, there's been excitement before, and so it'll be interesting to see if this time is different, because it's kind of petered out a couple different times
Yeah.
with AI initiatives. But looking at other things, looking at just technology broadly, I mean, the pace of change just continues to accelerate. We don't really talk about this anymore because it's become so ingrained in how we live our lives, but
Right.
it
Yeah.
really is amazing how, and you can look at anything you like, but and AI is one example. So just the continued acceleration of the pace of change is really interesting. I think also the hyper connectedness of the world, just like how everything is connected to everything else, and that also seems to be only getting more connected. And
Yeah.
there's lots of good that comes from that. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. Like, it's not a judgment. It just is that way. It's as it's becoming more connected, it becomes more complex, and you know, there's opportunities as well as challenges with that. But that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. Also, just uncertainty generally. You know, when we think about quantification, we think about uncertainty, and I think it's important to differentiate types of uncertainty. So there's uncertainty, like there's stuff we don't know about, but we could know about, and there's uncertainty as in there's randomness in the world that just, and they're different. And if
Right.
you like fancy philosophical terms, they have different philosophical terms for them. So it's
Sure.
epistemic uncertainty and aleatory uncertainty, but that's not really the point. The point is that we have methods, and it's a lot of the same methods that we use with FAIR and quantification for addressing stuff that we could know but don't, and stuff that just has inherent randomness to it.
Right.
And so, like for the first one, you know, you take a value of information approach. You don't need perfect information to make every decision. Everyone kind of intuitively understands that, right? Um,
Yep.
More than about 70% chance of rain. If you've got an umbrella and you're going to be outside, you take it with you. And
Yep.
does it need to be 90% or 95%? And how certain do you need to be about that to be able to, you don't have to have perfection in order to make decisions. And I think everyone understands that. So that's the first one about the gathering of information and the reduction of uncertainty in order to accomplish certain tasks or, in the risk management world, provide mitigations or transfer that or avoid it, stop doing
Yep.
that activity. So that's one thing. And then the other is, I don't want to say just as it's easy or simple, but it's just math. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm excited about that part too, and the distributions and how do you
Yeah.
handle the inherent randomness of the world. But, I think it's important when we're talking about uncertainty to have these distinctions and say, we really do have tools for kind of both of these and
Yeah.
approaches.
Right. Absolutely. Ways to make sense of it for sure. Well, Josh, really appreciate your insight into all of this and your thoughts about the Institute and just the profession in general. You've been in this for quite some time, so having that history is super impactful for folks who might be just joining the Institute today for the first time and really just starting to learn about this. So appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with me for the rest of the community. Before I let you go, just let me know something quickly about yourself that wouldn't be on your LinkedIn profile. And when you're not doing all of this, what keeps you active outside of work? What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Family, I have a 10-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. And so along with my wife, the four of us are outside doing all kinds of stuff that you do with small children, and that's always fun. So that keeps me busy. And also I'm in the garage gym with the barbell. I like the barbell weightlifting sort of training stuff. So not as much time to do that these days, but definitely a love of mine. So
Awesome.
that keeps me busy as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, hopefully it's not getting too hot down there in Dallas in the area yet. I know summer's
Not
approaching,
yet.
but
Soon.
hopefully it's nice currently. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is nice right now.
folks who are listening and who are in the Dallas Fort Worth area, be sure to sign up for information to get about the next chapter meetings that we're going to be hosting throughout the year, as well as just upcoming events for the rest of the year. We talked about FairCon. Our Fair Conference this year is going to be in New York City on November 4th and 5th. We have registration currently open, and the agenda is being planned and will be launched soon. So, for anybody interested, feel free to reserve your spot now and stay tuned for more information coming. So, again, Josh, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for
Thanks.
listening.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me.